Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sandy, and thanks for joining us today. So we are going to talk a little bit about sleep and aging and how that may impact yourself or a loved one that you might be caring for. Our objectives today are to talk about regulators for sleep, some different conditions that may affect your sleep, and certainly how to get a more restful sleep. So one of the things we wanted to talk about is, some interesting things that happen in our body in order to help us regulate our sleep. So our circadian clock responds mostly to light and sound, and that rhythm is developed through our pineal gland, which is the endocrine gland found in the brain. So if you look at the photo, you can see where the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, and the pineal gland are all impacted and assess and help us regulate our sleep. These endocrine glands produce and secrete the hormone melatonin, which is a hormone that helps regulate biological rhythms such as our sleep and wake cycles. The rhythm is developed between night and day, light and sound. So one of the issues that inhibits melatonin production is blue light. So I'm sure you've all heard talks about don't do your cell phone, don't do your tablet at night because there's a background of blue light. And that inhibits melatonin production 2 times longer than green light, which clearly would impact our quantity and quality of sleep. So that gives a little bit about the rhythm, talks a little bit about what glands impact and the hormones being secreted help our sleep pattern. Light, we've talked a little bit about blue light versus green light, no light versus dark light. The other issue that impacts our sleep would be temperature. So typically cooler temperatures in our room will help us sleep more soundly, help us go to sleep faster. One of the things that can reduce the temperature of our body is taking a quick shower before we go to bed. So even a rinse and a dry helps moisten the skin, and the evaporation helps leave a chilled effect on our body, which would help us regulate our sleep. Similar even like with babies, if you've been in that process where you've had babies and you've tried to get them to regulate their sleep in the evening, routines and keeping their temperature well balanced will help them sleep as well. And if you were like me when I had babies, I would give them a bath before the evening, so it would help calm them, keep them in a routine of getting ready for calming them in the bath, wiping them dry, and keeping their body temperature to get a chilled effect so that they would sleep better. And the final piece, the 5th step that would help regulate our sleep is clearly our mental wellness. And what I mean by mental wellness, is our stress and anxiety. Where are we having a mental check with ourselves before we go to bed? If we are highly stressed or have a lot of anxiety at the moment we lay our head to rest, that's going to be hard to regulate our sleep. In a typical adult sleep pattern, we go through REM cycles that you can see in the diagram every 90 minutes. They typically last about 10 minutes. When we start our REM, our heart rate and our temperature drops significantly in the beginning of our adult sleep pattern, which then causes us to have a very light sleep. So you can see that we go through 4 stages in that process. Then we have a REM pattern where we cycle through every 90 minutes. And during that REM pattern, that is called rapid eye movement. And in that pattern, we go through that throughout the night during our stages of sleep. So we have a quick poll to try to get a check to see where people are. What conditions do you personally need to go to in order to sleep better? So the answers would be, A, do you need a cool room? Do you need some background white noise, B? Or do you need a completely dark room? And that would be C.
All right. So Sandy, everybody is voting right now. Let's just give another few seconds to see any
Absolutely.
late votes that come in. All right. It looks like most of us have voted, and the majority of us, 56%, choose no light, and then an even 22% each choose white noise or a cool room.
So even based on those results of the poll, you can see that one of the things that really impacts how we sleep is light. So one of the issues with trouble of falling to sleep, and that was one of the reasons I kind of asked you that question, is do you have the right environment? Do you have no lights? Is there no noises? Do you sleep only in a bed? Do you sleep on a couch? What other activities are going on in your environment when you go to bed? If you are sleeping with a partner, do they sleep with the TV on? So one of the impacts that would increase your trouble to fall asleep would have an issue in your environment. The other issue that might impact you when you're going to bed is what actions do you take during the day that might impact your health? So for example, how much caffeine do you drink during the day? Do you exercise during the day? What's your stress level before you go to bed? Are you turning off your computer screen after sending an email or managing your project and then running to bed so you can hurry up and get 3 hours of sleep? But at the same time, when you're going there, your stress level's high because you're trying to finish that one last item. Practice some relaxation techniques. Are you doing any meditation? Do you have prayer? Do you have a time where you're still in the bed? Literally just being still. Do you have a time where you're being mindful of listening to your breathing, paying attention to how your body weight is in the bed? So being able to practice some of those relaxation techniques once you enter your bed. And then the other issue is if you're having trouble falling asleep is, and I always ask people to kind of think about this as a secondary, your final option. You've tried all these other things. Talk to your doctor. Maybe there's an underlying health condition. Maybe there's something that really is impacting your sleep. And as we go on to this presentation, we're going to talk about maybe a couple of those items that might be an underlying health condition that you hadn't even thought of. Or do you have trouble staying asleep? So I know in some of my own world, I have trouble going to sleep and have to really focus on that earlier slide of doing some relaxation techniques. But some people have trouble staying asleep. So they may go to sleep immediately, hit the bed, they're out. And these are some ideas that might help you stay asleep throughout the night and be able to go through your REM cycle ongoing throughout the night. As you saw, there's 4 stages. So there's an early falling asleep, we're relaxing, and then you go into a deeper sleep, and then you have your rapid eye movement time. And then you go through that process again over your 6 to 8 hours of sleep. But if you're waking up in the middle of the night, one of the things we talk about is make sure that you go to sleep when you feel tired. Don't extend it any longer because you're actually impacting your rhythm if you're overtired. Limit your caffeine and alcohol before bed. Caffeine, certainly, as you know, increases your heart rate, keeps you awake longer. And alcohol changes how your body processes that. So even though you may feel tired initially when you go to bed, it may wake you up later because it's processed through your body. If you wake up and can't fall asleep, I don't know about you, but in the old days, my mother used to say, count sheep, see if that helps. But get up. If you're still awake within 20 minutes, get up and leave your room. Maybe take a short walk to another room, maybe sit in another quiet space, and then come back in the room and try that process again of getting your body ready to sleep. It's real important, and it's difficult. One of the things that changes when we're asleep and we wake up in the middle of the night is then we feel like, oh, I can't get up at our normal time. If you set your pattern to go to sleep at a normal time and wake at the same time daily, you tend to sleep longer through the night. And then the fifth thing is limit naps. It's okay to take a quick 10, 15-minute nap, but if it extends for longer than that during the day, it's going to be harder for you to stay asleep during the evening. Again, this is all about our circadian rhythm that we showed in earlier, and we're going to talk about that later. But when you start switching your circadian rhythm throughout the day, and you take time off in the sleep, you have less time in night that your body is saying, well, I've already done that. I've already slept. So you will wake up again while you're trying to sleep in the evening. So we've got another poll. What's easier for you? Is it easier to fall asleep immediately when you get in your bed? Or is it difficult for you to stay asleep through the night?
All right, Sandy, just a few more seconds. We're getting some late votes in. All right, so it looks like it is slightly easier for the group to fall asleep when you're going to bed. So 57% of us have an easier time doing that than staying asleep throughout the night.
Great. So it sounds like our attendees here have developed some processes to help them fall asleep easier when they get to the bed. And like we talked about earlier, a lot of you indicated that you needed no light, and that is key with the circadian rhythm. And the other issue was keeping the room cool. Fantastic. So there's some common issues with sleep, and we talked a little bit about this earlier when I said some of them may be medical issues, and some of them might be mental wellness. So there's some physiological issues that may impact how well we sleep through the night or how often we wake up. And one of those that we're going to discuss is sleep apnea, and the other is an imbalanced thyroid. And we're also going to talk a little bit about hormones in that thyroid process. The other issue can certainly be your own personal mental wellness. And we talked a little bit about what do you do during the day to help you sleep better. So what can you do to release stress, anxiety, or depression? And as I was thinking about us doing this presentation, I kept thinking to myself, how important is this right now in the current COVID pandemic? How well are we managing our mental wellness so that we're able to turn it off at night and be able to have a restful sleep, to be more attuned to our next day activities, to have us function at a higher level? And stress with being isolated from our families, isolated from our friends, working from home, having a new work environment. What are we doing to relieve that? That may be impacting our sleep. Anxiety. What is this doing for the future of our country? What is it doing economically for ourselves personally? And how are we handling those anxious thoughts? The what next? What's going to happen tomorrow? How am I going to get through today? And then depression, you know, are we getting our personal needs met? Are we feeling depressed? Maybe we've lost loved ones. Maybe we know people that are sick. Maybe we can't see them. Maybe we're working in the field that's dealing with this as an essential personnel, and seeing the toll it's taking on families and those that are ill. How are we handling depression? And these items will certainly impact our ability to have a good night's sleep and our body to recover, because when we sleep, that's when our body recovers. So here's our normal anatomy for a person when they're sleeping. Our nasal cavity, so we breathe through our nose, we breathe through our mouth. It all goes down through our pharynx. We have our soft palate at the top of our mouth, which has a uvula. So when we eat versus breathing, right, we don't have stuff going into our lungs. One goes to our digestive tract, one goes to our lungs. And then we have our tongue. So this is what a normal anatomy looks like when you're resting or sleeping, okay? When you're standing, rather. When you go to sleep, there's different things that happen. So some of us sleep normally, some of us have snoring, and some of us may have sleep apnea. So these are those physiological issues. So when our normal sleep, the air is in the blue. We breathe through our nose or our mouth, through our open airway. Our tongue is relaxed. It falls slightly back, and you're able to breathe down through into your lungs. With snoring, one of the issues is our airway gets partially blocked, and it can be constricted from a couple different things. It can be constricted from our tongue. Our tongue may fall slightly back more. It could be constricted from swollen adenoids or tonsils. It could be constricted from having our nasal passages filled. So one of the things is that they're narrowed for some reason. Those airways are narrowed for some reason. It could be inherited. It could be fat buildup from fatty deposits. It could be thick necks, which have narrow airways. Smokers, they have inflamed their airways, make it narrower as well. So sleep apnea happens when your breathing repeatedly stops and starts and has restrictions throughout the night. So if you snore loudly, you have a partially blocked airway. You might feel tired even after a full night's sleep. You may have sleep apnea, where sleep apnea, as you can see, is a fully blocked airway. So symptoms of sleep apnea are loud snoring, episodes in which you stop breathing during your sleep, which is typically noticed by someone reported by someone else besides yourself, your partner's sleeping near you. If you find yourself gasping for air during sleep, you might awaken with a dry mouth. You might have a morning headache. You might have difficulty staying asleep, like some insomnia is building up. Excessive daytime sleepiness, difficult paying attention by being awake, and my favorite noticeable issue is irritability. So if you have sleep apnea or any of these things may be something that you're experiencing during the day, this would be one of those physiological reasons to maybe go see a doctor and say, hey, I might need to have a sleep test to see if I have sleep apnea, or if we can use a device to help us sleep better and keep those airways open. And just to kind of let you know, children can also have sleep apnea. So this is not just with adults or seniors as we age. It can happen with children as well. So anything that blocks your breathing airway can contribute to snoring. And if it's complete obstruction, it could be considered sleep apnea. Another reason for a physiological reason that you might not be able to sleep well through the evening would be hyperthyroidism. Your thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland in your throat. It produces hormones that tell your body what to produce, which affects your heart rate, your sleep, and your temperature. So when if you are in hyperthyroid, if you have a hyperthyroid, sorry, it could be that it's causing you to be nervous or anxious, and you might have a racing pulse. And so there's medications to take to level that out. If your meds are off, if you're not producing enough hormones, you can get foggy. You might find yourself shifting. Can I overcome these events if this happens? These are thoughts that trigger your anxiety, right? Sitting there and having all these mind bubble thoughts, the what if questions, I call them. So taking time to question our thought process helps us address the anxiety issue. Know your triggers. Know your triggers when you're getting ready to go to bed. Is there a time of year that maybe you don't sleep as well as another time of year? Is there an anniversary of a traumatic experience, maybe losing a loved one or having a car accident that causes you to get anxious? And what can you do to take precautions to avoid those triggers? Are you able to stay in a place that's safe or be with a person that's safe? What are those things that cause your anxiety level to rise up? One of the ways to reduce your anxiety is to practice some deep breathing techniques. I use this often as one of the techniques that I share with in a class called Stress Builders for family caregivers. Just sitting, it's an easy technique. You can do it while you're sitting, you can do it while you're walking, but taking that technique, it allows our body to slow the result, to slow our heart rate down, because one of the things that happens when we're anxious is our body gets into the response of fight or flight mode. When it does this, it thinks we're in danger. And so when we do deep breathing, we can slow that response way down. And it doesn't take very long. So it's a 10-second deep breath in, count to 10, breathing in, hold it for 2, and release it for 10. One of the things you can see in anxiety, where maybe that's when you need to practice that deep breathing, is you might start getting sweaty, your palms might get sweaty, your body is trying to cool itself. And by doing the deep breathing, you actually are able to produce that. The other piece to help with reducing your anxiety is doing some meditation or prayer. Find what works for you. With depression and anxiety, it's important to find one of these tips and tools that works in your world. Not all of these work for everybody. Some people write it. They're meditating, they're praying. If they write out, it helps them to get it out of their brain and on the paper. They can release that so it's not so internal. The next biggest thing I have found, and we share a lot with our family caregivers, is setting up a daily routine. When our routine, and it's been clearly disrupted in this COVID right now, but to try to take time to set up a daily routine. What time you get up, what time you eat breakfast, what time you eat lunch, when you check emails, what time you have dinner, when do you do your exercise, how do you eat, when do you drink enough water, and then again, when do you go to bed? So combining your routine with a healthy lifestyle can help reduce our anxiety and our depression, which also will have a less likely impact on our sleep. So some of the ways to get a better sleep, and these are things that you guys are already familiar with, I'm sure, but it's nice to have a reminder. We get busy in our daily routine as caregivers, and we forget to take time for ourselves. And so some of these are quick visuals and reminders to help us when we go to sleep to get a better night's sleep. Make sure we get to bed when we're tired. Stop having that caffeine, that quick coffee pick-me-up at least 6 to 8 hours before bedtime. For some of us that are highly caffeine sensitive, I stop at noon. I won't have any caffeine after noon. Blue light exposure before bed, there's been a ton of recent studies about how much blue light, and we talked about that early on, it impacts your circadian rhythm and decreases your melatonin production 2 times more than green light. So stop that blue light 2 hours before bed because it's impacted your melatonin that your body is already producing naturally. So don't look at your phone. Don't look at your tablet. Use a device. Don't watch TV right before you go to bed. Get on your schedule, stick to it. During the day, keep your body moving. A lot of us are working from home, sitting in front of screens. Schedule that time to get up and walk around and get some exercise to keep your body moving and be able to get your body and your heart rate moving and processed so that when you're ready to go to bed, you are sleepy. And then if you have an opportunity, shower before bedtime. That really reduces your, like we told you, it starts to have your body automatically start cooling. So when you get to bed, you feel more rested and your body temperature is dropping so you can sleep better. Here's an example of optimizing your circadian rhythm. This is key for all people, especially one of the things we've talked, I have a daughter that works overnights, and so we've talked a lot about her circadian rhythm and how to fix it so that she's awake at night and gets good sleep during the day. But typically your circadian rhythm, you start your day in the early morning, right? Your melatonin release stops in the morning. You get your day started by getting some sunlight. Your highest alert is from 11 to about 4 in the afternoon. And so you can see afternoon, your fastest reaction time, your coordinated best. That's when your alertness is awake and you really are high productivity for yourself. Start limiting caffeine in the late afternoon. And after 6 o'clock, you start dimming your lights. You start setting your rhythm up to start getting your melatonin to start releasing again naturally in your body through your pituitary gland. So you start limiting your technology use, and then you're starting to release. And you can see from midnight to 6 a.m., 6 or 7 a.m., you start to have your 4 sleeps where your body can recover. You get your restorative sleep where your fat is recovering, you're able to process your energy, your muscles are recovering. You go into your deep sleep, and then you have your REM sleep so that when you wake up in the morning, your melatonin release stops, you're ready to take your day on. So before we end this presentation, I had just a little quick checkpoint in for you. When was the last time you had your thyroid checked? We've talked about, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box and we'll answer them as we can. And then just if you have some checkpoints in this or have questions, one of my other questions for you is, what is the largest contributor to you when you do have sleep pattern and it's impacted. Is it being impacted due to COVID? Is it being impacted due to stress or anxiety? So certainly let us know if you have any questions or how we can answer that, or if you have any feedback as to why you're not getting a good night's sleep.
All right, Sandy, the chat box is pretty quiet, so I know you've
Okay,
given me an awful lot of information, but I'll keep on looking and let you know if anybody has any questions for you.
sure. For all us caregivers out there, sleep is important.
All right, it's still pretty quiet, so I think you did a pretty good job.
Well, I appreciate all the people that have, certainly taken time out of their day, and hopefully that some of these tips and techniques helped them understand the importance of sleep and how aging impacts it, and then some tools to help increase the ability to go to sleep well and sleep well through the evening.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Sandy. If anybody has any questions about how to have home care for a loved one, Right at Home has locations throughout the country. Feel free to look at rightathome.net and to put into your zip code. And for our senior lifestyle properties, we also have locations throughout not only Texas, but throughout the country. If you're not familiar with a location close to you, please check out seniorlifestyle.com and you can put your zip code in there and you'll be directed to the closest community for you. So thank you again, Sandy, so much for all the help.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity.
All right. Hope everybody has a great rest of the day and stay safe. And thank you so much for joining us today.